She crawled to the Alpha King's gates with blood on her hands and a death sentence branded into her skin. Senya had nowhere left to go. Every pack in the realm had been told she was a bond breaker, the worst crime a wolf could commit, and any alpha who found her had the right to kill her on sight. So the guards who discovered her collapsed in the mud did not offer water or mercy. They drew their swords. "Wait," Senya rasped through cracked lips. "I seek audience with the king." They laughed. Alpha King Riven of Valdrin was known throughout the realm as the Cold King, a ruler who had never shown mercy to anyone, who wore black gloves even in summer, who had executed men for lesser crimes than hers. Begging for his mercy was begging for a quicker death. But when word reached the castle, the king came to see her himself. He walked through the gates like winter given form. Tall, broad, with dark hair and eyes the color of a frozen lake, he looked at her broken body, at the mark of severance scarred into her wrist, at the proof of her supposed crime. Every wolf present expected a swift execution. Instead, the Alpha King spoke 2 words that would shatter the foundations of every pack in the realm. "Bring her inside." What happened next would break centuries of tradition, ignite a war between alphas, expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest ranks of wolf nobility, and force 2 people who had sworn never to let anyone close to make an impossible choice. He offered her sanctuary but swore he would never touch her, never care for her, and never love her. She accepted because cold was better than death. Neither of them understood how impossible those vows would be. The gates of Valdrin were forged from iron and bone, built 3 centuries ago to remind visitors that the Alpha King's territory was not a place for the weak. Senya had heard stories about these gates since childhood, how they had never been breached, how supplicants who arrived uninvited were often carried out in pieces. Now she lay in their shadow, her cheek pressed into the cold mud, her body too broken to move another inch. She had been traveling for 19 days, 19 days since Sefton had pronounced her guilty before the entire Thornmire pack. 19 days since his enforcers had held her down while the brand seared into her wrist. 19 days of running through forests and sleeping in hollows and eating whatever scraps she could find, always moving because staying still meant death. The mark of severance throbbed on her skin. A broken chain, the symbol of a wolf who had violated the sacred mate bond. It did not matter that she was innocent. It did not matter that she had never been mated to anyone, that Sefton's accusation was a lie designed to destroy her for refusing him. The mark was all anyone saw. "What have we here?" A guard's voice rang out, thick with disgust. Senya tried to lift her head, but her body refused. She heard footsteps approaching, boots squelching through mud, and then rough hands grabbed her arm and wrenched it upward. "Bond breaker," the guard spat, seeing the brand. "You are either very stupid or very desperate to show up here. Please." The words scraped out of her throat like gravel. "I need to see the king." More laughter joined the first guards. Senya counted at least 4 voices, all of them cruel, all of them certain of what came next. "The king?" one of them repeated. "You think Alpha Riven is going to waste his time on filth like you?" Senya closed her eyes. She had known this was likely, had known that crawling to Valdrin was probably just choosing the manner of her death rather than avoiding it. But Riven was the only authority in the realm who stood above pack alphas, the only one who could overturn a conviction. "He will not care," a voice murmured in her mind. "No one has ever cared." "What is happening here?" The new voice cut through the guard's mockery like a blade through silk. Deep, cold, utterly devoid of warmth. The hands gripping Senya's arm released immediately. "Your Majesty." The guard's tone transformed into servility. "We found this creature at the gates. Bond breaker by the mark of her. We were about to dispose of her." Silence fell. Senya forced her eyes open, forced her head to turn, and looked upon the Alpha King of Valdrin for the first time. He was terrifying. Not in the way Sefton had been terrifying, with his explosive rage and cruel smile. Riven's terror was quieter, deeper, like the stillness of a frozen lake that could crack beneath your feet without warning. He stood over 6 feet tall, his shoulders broad beneath a coat of black velvet, his dark hair swept back from a face that might have been carved from marble. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips pressed into a line that suggested they had forgotten how to smile. His eyes were the pale gray of winter ice, and they held nothing. No curiosity, no cruelty, no mercy, just emptiness. Senya noticed his hands last. They were covered in black leather gloves despite the mild autumn weather, fitted so precisely they might have been a second skin. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze traveling over her mud-caked auburn hair, the sharp angles of her dirt-smeared face, the bruises and cuts that covered every visible inch of her olive skin. Once, before the accusation, before the running, people had called her striking. High cheekbones like her grandmother, eyes the deep amber of autumn honey. But 19 days of survival had hollowed her cheeks and dimmed everything that might have been beautiful. When his eyes reached her wrist, they paused on the brand, and Senya felt a fracture spread through her chest. This is it, she thought. This is where I die. The king's expression did not change. He looked at her mark of severance the same way he had looked at everything else, with that terrible, hollow emptiness. "What pack?" he asked. Senya's voice emerged as barely a breath. "Thornmire, Your Majesty." "Sefton's territory." "Yes." Another pause. Senya became aware of how quiet the world had grown. The guards were not breathing. The wind itself seemed to have stilled, waiting for the king's judgment. Riven's eyes moved from her brand back to her face. For one fleeting moment, a flicker passed through those frozen depths before it vanished completely. "Bring her inside," he said. The silence that followed was deafening. "Your Majesty?" The head guard sounded strangled. "She is a bond-breaker. Pack law clearly states that—" "I am aware of pack law." Riven's tone did not change, did not rise, but a quality in it made the guard stumble backward. "I wrote most of it. Bring her inside, have the healers tend to her wounds, and prepare a chamber in the East Wing." "The East Wing?" Another guard could not contain his shock. "But that is where the noble guests—" Did I stutter? The question hung in the air like the blade of a guillotine. No one dared answer. Riven looked at Senya one final time. His expression remained as empty as before, but she could have sworn she saw calculation beneath the ice. A suggestion that this decision was not mercy at all, but a far more complicated design. "When she is presentable," he said, "bring her to my study. We have much to discuss." Then he turned and walked back through the gates, leaving chaos in his wake. Senya felt hands lifting her, gentler now, but trembling with fear. And as she was carried into the Alpha King's territory, a single thought echoed through her exhausted mind. What could he possibly want from me? She woke in a bed softer than any she had ever known. For a long moment, Senya simply lay there, convinced she was dreaming or dead, because nothing in her life had ever felt like this. Clean sheets against her skin, warmth seeping into bones that had been cold for weeks. The absence of fear, if only for a few heartbeats. Then memory crashed back. The gates. The guards. The king with his empty eyes and gloved hands. Senya sat up too quickly and her vision swam. She gripped the edge of the mattress until the dizziness passed, then took stock of her surroundings. The chamber was larger than her entire family's cottage in Thornmire. Rich tapestries covered the stone walls, depicting wolves running through moonlit forests. A fire crackled in the hearth despite the mild weather, filling the room with warmth. Her torn and filthy clothing had been replaced with a simple but well-made dress of dark blue wool. Someone had bathed her while she was unconscious, washed the mud and blood from her hair, and bandaged the worst of her wounds. Her wrist still bore the mark of severance. Nothing could wash that away. A knock sounded at the door, sharp and businesslike. "Enter," Senya said, her voice steadier than she felt. A woman stepped inside. She was middle-aged with steel-gray hair pulled back severely from a stern face, and she wore the uniform of senior household staff. Her eyes swept over Senya with professional assessment and no warmth whatsoever. "You are awake. Good. The king will see you now." No introduction, no explanation. The woman simply turned and walked out, clearly expecting Senya to follow. Senya stood on unsteady legs and obeyed. What choice did she have? The walk to the king's study took them through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings, portraits of ancient Alpha Kings staring down with cold authority. Guards posted at every junction who tracked Senya's movement with barely concealed hostility. Word had clearly spread about what she was. "They hate me already," she thought, "and they do not even know me." The study doors were massive, carved from dark wood and reinforced with iron. The stern woman knocked twice, waited for a response Senya could not hear, then pushed them open. "The bond breaker, Your Majesty." She practically shoved Senya inside and closed the doors behind her. The king's study was exactly what Senya would have expected. Books lining every wall, ancient and leather-bound. Maps spread across a massive desk, held down by weights shaped like wolf skulls. A fire burning low in the hearth. And there, standing by the window with his back to her, was Riven. He did not turn immediately. Senya stood in silence, watching the rigid line of his shoulders, the way his gloved hands were clasped behind his back, the slight tension in his posture that suggested he was very aware of her presence even without looking. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked finally. Senya swallowed. "No, Your Majesty. Neither do I." He turned then, and Senya felt the weight of his gaze like a physical force. In the daylight streaming through the window, his features were even more striking than they had been at the gates. Sharp and cold and impossibly perfect, like a sculpture that had never learned human warmth. "You should be dead," he continued flatly. "Pack law demands execution for bond breakers. Every alpha from here to the northern mountains would tell me I am within my rights to have your head mounted on my walls." Senya's hands trembled at her sides, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. "Then why did you not?" A flicker crossed his face. That same unidentifiable expression she had seen at the gates, there and gone before she could name it. "I have my reasons." He moved from the window to his desk, putting the massive piece of furniture between them like a barrier. "Reasons I am not inclined to share. What you need to understand is this. I am offering you sanctuary within Valdrin's walls. No alpha can touch you here. No enforcer from Thornmire can drag you back to face whatever punishment Sefton has planned. You will be safe." Safe. The word hit Senya's chest like a physical blow. She had not felt safe in so long that she had forgotten the word existed. "In exchange for what?" she asked, because nothing came free. She had learned that lesson long ago. Riven's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your presence, your compliance with my rules, and your acceptance of certain conditions." "What conditions?" He was silent for a moment, and Senya saw his gloved hands flex against the desk's surface. "You will not touch me," he said. "Ever. Under any circumstances." Senya blinked. Of all the demands she had expected, that was not one of them. "You will keep your distance in public and in private," he continued. "You will not enter my chambers. You will not attempt physical contact of any kind. If you violate this rule even once, you will be cast out immediately. Sanctuary revoked. Is that understood?" "Yes, Your Majesty. But may I ask why?" "No." The word was ice. "You may not." Senya pressed her lips together and nodded. Furthermore, Riven went on, this arrangement is purely practical. I am not rescuing you out of kindness. I am not interested in your gratitude, or your loyalty, or your... He paused, darkness moving behind his eyes. Your affection. You are here because it serves my purposes. Nothing more. I understand. Do you? He studied her with those frozen eyes, and Senya had the uncomfortable sensation that he was seeing far more than she wanted him to see. You are very calm for a woman who just discovered her savior has no interest in saving her. I have learned not to expect warmth from alphas, Senya said quietly. Cold I can survive. It is cruelty that kills. A shift passed through Riven's expression. For just a moment the ice cracked, and Senya glimpsed what lay underneath. Pain. Then it was gone, and he was cold marble once more. The servants will show you to your permanent chambers, he said, returning his attention to the maps on his desk. You will receive appropriate clothing and meals. You may move freely within the castle grounds, but you are not permitted to leave Valdrin's territory. Any questions? Senya had 1,000 questions. Why had he really saved her? What purposes could she possibly serve? Why did he wear those gloves constantly, even indoors? Why had she seen pain in the eyes of a man known throughout the realm as having no emotions at all? But she asked none of them. No, Your Majesty. Good. You are dismissed. Senya turned toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Your Majesty? What? The word was clipped, impatient. Whatever your reasons, she said softly, thank you for not letting me die at your gates. She did not wait for a response. She did not expect one. But as she slipped through the door, she could have sworn she heard him exhale, sharp and sudden, like a man who had just been struck. Word spread through the castle like wildfire. By evening, every servant, guard, and noble in residence knew that the Alpha King had granted sanctuary to a convicted bondbreaker. By the following morning, ravens had carried the news to every major pack in the realm. Senya felt the weight of their stares everywhere she went. She had been given a chamber in the east wing, smaller than the room where she had first woken, but still luxurious beyond anything she had known. The servants who brought her meals refused to meet her eyes. The guards posted in the corridors tracked her movements with open suspicion. 3 days passed in this strange isolation. Senya explored what little she was permitted to explore. A small garden courtyard, the castle's vast library, the training yards where she watched warriors spar from a safe distance. She saw the king only once, crossing a corridor far ahead of her, his dark coat billowing behind him like a shadow given form. He did not look in her direction. On the 4th day, everything changed. Senya was in the library when the doors burst open, and a man strode in flanked by 2 armed guards. He was tall and golden-haired, handsome in a sharp-edged way, and he wore the insignia of a messenger from a foreign pack. Thornmeyer's insignia. Senya's blood turned to ice. There you are. The messenger's lip curled when he spotted her. So it is true. The bondbreaker lives. Senya rose slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. I have sanctuary here. For now. The messenger's smile was cruel. Alpha Sefton demands your return. He has sent formal petition to King Riven, invoking the Treaty of Pact Justice. You are a criminal who fled lawful punishment. Valdrin is required by ancient law to surrender you. The words hit Senya like physical blows. She had known Sefton would not simply let her go, but she had not expected it so soon. The king granted me protection, she managed. The king overstepped. The messenger moved closer, triumph gleaming in his eyes. Pack law supersedes royal preference, everyone knows that. That is quite enough. The new voice came from the doorway, cold and sharp as a blade unsheathed. Senya turned to see Riven standing at the library's entrance, his expression carved from stone. The messenger immediately dropped into a bow, though his smile did not fade. Your Majesty, I bring formal petition from Alpha Sefton of Thornmire, demanding the return of the criminal Senya to face. I received your Alpha's petition. Riven walked into the library, and the temperature seemed to drop with each step. I have prepared my response. You may deliver it personally. He held out a sealed envelope. The messenger took it with barely concealed eagerness. The answer is no. The messenger's head snapped up. Your Majesty? No. Riven's voice carried no emotion whatsoever, which somehow made it more terrifying. The woman remains under my protection. She will not be surrendered to Thornmire or any other pack. If Alpha Sefton wishes to dispute this decision, he is welcome to challenge me directly. I will await him in my throne room at his earliest convenience. The silence that followed was absolute. Challenging an Alpha King meant combat to the death. No Alpha in 3 generations had been foolish enough to try. Your Majesty. The messenger's voice had lost all its confidence. The Treaty of Pact Justice clearly states. I wrote the Treaty of Pact Justice, Riven interrupted. Article 7, Clause 3. The Alpha King reserves the right to grant asylum in cases where evidence suggests wrongful conviction. I am invoking that right. There is no evidence of wrongful. There is my judgment. Riven's eyes locked onto the messenger with freezing intensity. And my judgment is that this woman was convicted without proper investigation, without testimony from neutral parties, and without any evidence beyond the word of the Alpha who accused her. An Alpha who had considerable personal interest in seeing her destroyed. Senya's breath caught. He knew. Somehow, the king knew that Sefton's accusation was revenge for her rejection. You are dismissed, Riven told the messenger. Deliver my response to your Alpha, and inform him that if he sends another representative to threaten people under my protection, I will consider it an act of war. The messenger fled. In the aftermath, silence rang through the library like a bell. Senya stood frozen, staring at the king who had just shattered centuries of tradition to protect her. Your Majesty, she breathed, what you have done, the other packs will not accept this. Yes. Riven's expression did not change. I know. They might unite against you. They might. Then why? The question burst out of her. Why would you risk war to protect someone like me? For a long moment, Riven did not answer. He simply looked at her with those frozen eyes, and Senya saw a tempest churning beneath the ice, a struggle he was fighting to keep hidden. I told you, he said finally. You are here because it serves my purposes. Then he turned and walked out, leaving Senya alone with the weight of his impossible choice. That night, she dreamed of Thornmire, of Sefton's face twisted with fury when she had refused his claim, of his voice ringing through the great hall, proclaiming her a bond breaker, a liar, a creature unworthy of any pack's protection. She woke gasping, tears streaming down her cheeks, and found someone sitting in the shadows of her room. The nightmares do not stop. A woman's voice, cool and detached. Believe me, I know. Senya scrambled upright, her heart pounding. The figure moved into the moonlight, revealing a young woman with silver blonde hair and sharp features. Beautiful, in a cold sort of way. Who are you? Senya demanded. How did you get in here? My name is Neve. The woman studied her with eyes that revealed nothing. I am the king's cousin, and I came to warn you. Warn me about what? Neve smiled, and it was not a kind expression. About him. About Riven. You think he saved you out of mercy? Out of some hidden nobility of spirit? She laughed softly. My cousin has never done anything merciful in his life. Senya's blood ran cold. Then why did he? That is what I am trying to figure out. Neve rose from her chair and moved toward the door. But I will tell you this much, bondbreaker. The king has a secret, a truth he has hidden for years, a burden that would destroy him if it ever came to light. She paused at the threshold. And I think somehow, impossibly, you are connected to it. Connected how? But Neve was already gone, leaving nothing but shadows and unanswered questions. 2 weeks passed in strange suspension. Senya existed in the castle like a ghost, present but not quite real, tolerated but never welcomed. The servants still refused to meet her eyes, but the king's protection held. No one dared touch her. And slowly, carefully, Senya began to breathe again. She spent most of her days in the library, losing herself in books she had never been permitted to read in Thornmire. Histories of the ancient pacts, treatises on wolf magic and bloodline gifts. It was there, surrounded by dusty volumes and afternoon sunlight, that she first saw Riven without his armor of coldness. She had not heard him enter. One moment she was alone, curled in a window seat with a book of old legends. The next, she glanced up and found him standing 3 aisles away, his back to her, his gloved hand resting on the spine of a book he had not pulled from the shelf. He did not know she was there. His posture was different, looser, lacking the rigid control he wore like a second skin in public. His head was bowed slightly, and Senya could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers pressed against the leather binding as if grounding himself. Then she heard it. So soft she almost missed it. A sound that might have been a breath, or might have been an expression of anguish far more broken. He was in pain. Senya moved before she could think better of it. Her book tumbled from her lap as she rose, and the sound shattered the silence like glass. Riven spun around. For one unguarded moment, Senya saw everything he worked so hard to hide. Exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes, hunger and hollowness in his gaze, pain, raw and real, before his expression slammed shut like a door. "What are you doing here?" His voice was ice, but she could hear the cracks in it now. "Reading." Senya held up the fallen book as evidence. "I did not mean to disturb you, Your Majesty. I will leave." "No." The word came out sharper than he probably intended. He seemed to catch himself, his jaw tightening. "Stay. I am the one intruding." He turned to go, and Senya should have let him. Should have remembered her place, remembered his rules, and remembered that she was a bond breaker surviving on borrowed mercy. Instead, she said, "Are you all right?" Riven stopped. For a long moment, he did not turn around, did not speak, and did not move at all. "Why would you ask me that?" "Because you are not." The words came out before she could stop them. "You try to hide it, but I can see. You are hurting." Slowly, he turned. His eyes found hers, and Senya felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. "You see too much," he said quietly. "Maybe. Or maybe no one else bothers to look." A flicker crossed his face, pain mixed with longing. "You should be afraid of me," he said. "Everyone else is." "I have known true cruelty." Senya met his gaze without flinching. "You are cold, but you are not cruel. There is a difference." Riven stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he did not understand. Then, so softly she almost missed it, he laughed. Not a warm sound, not joyful, but real in a way nothing else about him had been. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both." Another pause. Then Riven moved closer, stopping just outside arm's reach, and studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "The nightmares," he said. "Do you still have them?" Senya's breath caught. "How did you know about?" "The servants talk. They say you cry out in your sleep, that you wake screaming for someone to believe you." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I did not realize I was disturbing anyone." "You are not." His voice had softened almost imperceptibly. "I simply noticed." They stood in silence, and Senya became acutely aware of how close he was. Close enough that she could see the individual threads of silver in his gray eyes. Close enough to notice the slight tremor in his gloved hands. Close enough that if she reached out, she could touch him. She remembered his rule. No contact. Ever. Your Majesty, she said carefully, may I ask you a question? You may ask. I may not answer. The gloves. Why do you always wear them? His expression shuddered immediately, all that brief openness disappearing behind walls of ice. That is not a question I will answer. I am sorry. I should not have. No. He cut her off, his voice strange and strained. You should not have. He turned and strode toward the door, his coat billowing behind him. But at the threshold, he paused. The nightmares, he said without looking back. They fade eventually. Not completely. Never completely. But enough that you can breathe again. Then he was gone, leaving Senya with the unmistakable sense that the Alpha King knew far more about nightmares than any ruler should. 3 nights later, the other Alphas arrived for a summit. Senya watched from a hidden gallery as Riven faced 5 of the most powerful pack leaders in the realm, all demanding her surrender. He refused them all. I have reviewed the circumstances of the woman's conviction, he told them, his voice cold as winter steel. I have found them lacking. The accusing Alpha had personal motive to destroy her. No witnesses testified. No investigation was conducted. The brand was applied within hours of the accusation. Sefton is a predator who punished a woman for refusing his claim. Riven's voice finally showed an edge. I know exactly what he is, and I know exactly what he tried to do to her. From her hidden vantage point, Senya felt tears burning in her eyes. No one had ever defended her like this. That night, she found herself at his study door. He was standing by the window, still in his formal clothes. You were watching, he said without turning. From the gallery. How did you know? I always know where you are. The words came out strangely, as if he had not meant to say them. Senya moved closer. What you did today, no one has ever... Her voice broke. Thank you. Riven's expression flickered. Pain again, and that strange longing she kept glimpsing beneath his frozen exterior. Do not thank me, he said roughly. I told you, this is not mercy. As she passed him, her foot caught on the edge of a carpet and she stumbled. Instinctively, she reached out to steady herself. Her bare hand closed around his wrist, just above the edge of his glove. The effect was instantaneous. Riven gasped as if she had stabbed him, his entire body going rigid. His skin beneath her fingers was ice cold, far colder than any living being should be, and she felt a current pulse between them. Energy, dark and painful and somehow familiar. Then he wrenched away from her, stumbling backward, his face contorted with anguish beyond physical pain. Get out. His voice was barely recognizable. Get out now. Senya fled, but she could not forget the feeling of his skin against hers, could not forget the cold, could not forget the words he gasped just before she ran, so quiet she almost missed them. God's help me, she is the one. For 3 days after that night, Riven avoided her completely. He took his meals in his chambers. He conducted all business behind closed doors. On the 4th night, he appeared at her door. May I come in? Senya stepped aside. He entered slowly, then settled near the fireplace with several feet of distance between them. What happened the other night? He began, then stopped. Started again. I need to explain. You do not owe me any explanation. Perhaps not. But you deserve one. He drew a breath. You asked about my gloves. The answer is complicated. Senya waited, hardly daring to breathe. There is a curse on my bloodline, Riven said quietly, placed generations ago by a witch my ancestor wronged. Physical contact causes me pain. Any touch, from anyone, feels like ice burning through my veins. The more someone cares about me, the worse the pain becomes. And if anyone ever touched me with genuine... He could not seem to finish the sentence. With genuine what? Senya breathed. Love. The word came out broken. If anyone ever touched me with genuine love, with true feeling, the curse would activate fully. My heart would freeze. I would die. The horror of it crashed over Senya like a wave. A man who could never be touched, never be held, never be comforted. That is why you are so cold, she breathed. You have had to be, to survive. I have had to keep everyone at a distance, my entire life. He laughed bitterly. The cold king. They think it is a choice. I am so sorry. Riven, I am so sorry. His eyes snapped to hers at the use of his name. When you touched me, he continued, his voice rough, a different reaction occurred. The pain was there, yes, but beneath it, there was warmth. A feeling I have never experienced before. He shook his head slowly. Your touch did not kill me. It should have. The care in your eyes should have been enough to trigger the curse completely. But instead, for just a moment, I felt warm. Senya's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What does that mean? I do not know. He looked at her then, really looked, and Senya saw the desperation behind his careful control. But I think it means you are different. I have dug into your bloodline. Your mother's mother was a healer. Was she not? Senya blinked. She died before I was born. I do not know much about her. She was more than an ordinary healer. There are records, buried and hidden, but I found them. Your grandmother had the gift of breaking. She could touch cursed objects, cursed people, and unravel the magic binding them. That is impossible. I have never... You have never been allowed to. Riven's voice sharpened. Think about it. You manifested no obvious powers, so no one taught you. But Sefton knew. Somehow he found out what your bloodline carries. A woman who could potentially break curses would be incredibly valuable to an alpha with ambitions, or incredibly dangerous if she refused to cooperate. The pieces began clicking together in Senya's mind. Sefton's sudden interest in her, his rage when she refused his claim, the speed and brutality of her conviction. He wanted to use me, she said slowly, and when I refused, he destroyed me so no one else could have what I might offer. That is my theory. But I do not have any powers? You survived touching me. That alone suggests your nature is different. The curse should have killed you too. Anyone who touches me with genuine feeling experiences a shadow of the ice. It should have been agony for you. Senya thought back to that moment. The cold. Yes. The strange pulse of energy. But agony? No. If anything, she had felt drawn to the pain, as if a part of her wanted to reach into it and pull it apart. What happens now? She asked. Now we test the theory, carefully, slowly. If you are willing. I will try, she said softly. Whatever you need, I will try. The ice in his expression cracked, and beneath it Senya glimpsed warmth, wounded and achingly human. Why? His voice was barely audible. After everything I have put you through, the cold terms, the rules, and the distance, why would you help me? Because I know what it feels like to be alone, to have everyone look at you and see a flaw, to be trapped by circumstances you did not choose. She met his gaze without flinching. And because despite all your coldness, you are the first person who has ever believed I might be more than what I was branded. At the door, he paused. Senya. It was the first time he had used her name. Yes? The warmth I felt when you touched me. It was the first warmth I have felt in 24 years. Since I was 7 years old and the curse first manifested. A breath. Thank you for that. The weeks that followed were unlike anything she had experienced. Riven came to her chambers nearly every evening now, always maintaining careful distance but staying for hours. They talked about everything. His childhood isolation, her years in Thornmire, the books they loved. They began their experiments carefully. Brief touches, always initiated by Senya, always with Riven braced for pain. At first, nothing happened, but gradually a change occurred. She began to sense the curse itself, a dark lattice of frozen magic wrapped around his heart. It pulsed with cold energy, old and bitter and full of ancient grief. And when she touched it with her mind, she felt it flinch. "There!" Riven gasped during their 7th session. "Did you feel that?" I felt a tremor, a slight yielding. "It never yields." His voice was odd. "It never moves for anyone." Hope bloomed between them, fragile and terrifying, and with hope came other feelings. Feelings Senya tried desperately to suppress but could not ignore. The way her heart raced when Riven entered a room. The way she memorized every rare smile, every unguarded moment. She was falling in love with the cold king, and that, she knew, might be the most dangerous development of all. "You are getting stronger." The old healer Riven had brought to the castle examined Senya with keen eyes. "The gift is awakening." Senya sat in her chambers while Mayera, an ancient woman who had trained with her grandmother decades ago, assessed her progress. 3 months had passed since that first accidental touch. "How much stronger do I need to be?" Senya asked. "To break the curse?" Mara's expression grew somber. "The curse is ancient and deeply rooted. Breaking it would require immense power." She paused. "And it would require a willing sacrifice. The curse was born from betrayal and grief. It can only be broken by its opposite, love given freely without expectation of return, at great personal cost." That night, Riven came to her chambers, but his manner was different. He seemed agitated, pacing rather than settling. "The council met today," he said finally. "They have been pressuring me for months." "About what?" "Marriage. They want me to produce an heir. They say the succession is unstable, that I need to secure the bloodline before—" He stopped. "Before what?" "Before the curse kills me." He laughed without humor. "They do not know about the curse specifically, but they know a wrongness exists. They can see me deteriorating. The ice spreads a little further every year. My father was dead by 40, his father by 38. He finally stopped pacing. I am 31. Senya's heart clenched. "How long do you have?" "Years, perhaps. Maybe less. The cold is getting harder to manage." "Then we need to work faster." "Senya." His voice stopped her. "Even if you break the curse, I am not asking you to stay. I know this is not what you wanted." "What if I want to stay?" Riven went very still. "What?" "What if breaking the curse is not just about your survival? What if I want to stay regardless?" Her voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. "I am falling in love with you, Riven. Maybe I have already fallen, and I know that is probably the most foolish thing I could do, but I cannot stop it." Riven closed his eyes as if she had struck him. "You cannot love me," he said quietly. "If you love me, truly love me, and you touch me, your curse activates. You die." "I know." Senya's voice broke. "But I also know that I might be able to break it." Mara said it requires love given freely as sacrifice. What if my love is not the trigger that kills you, but the key that saves you? And if you are wrong, then at least you will know. At least you will know that someone loved you enough to try. Riven's control shattered. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, stopping just inches away. "I have spent my entire life building walls," he said roughly, "keeping everyone out. And then, you crawled to my gates covered in blood and mud, and somehow, impossibly, you made me feel things I had convinced myself I would never feel. Riven, I did not bring you here just because you might break my curse." The confession spilled out of him. "I brought you here because the moment I saw you, a recognition sparked inside me. I looked at you, and I knew you were important. I just did not understand how. Senya reached up with trembling hands, hovering just shy of his face. Tell me to stop, she breathed. Tell me not to touch you, and I will not. His gray eyes burned into hers, no longer cold but blazing with fierce desperation. I cannot tell you to stop. Gods help me. I want you to touch me more than I have ever wanted anything. Senya pressed her palms to his cheeks. The cold hit her first, searing and deep, shooting up her arms like frozen lightning. She felt the curse rear up, felt it recognize the threat she posed. But beneath the ice she felt warmth, buried deep, fighting to reach her, and she felt her gift respond. Power surged through her, instinctive and wild, pouring into the frozen lattice around his heart. She pushed against the curse, felt it crack, and felt it begin to give. Senya. Riven's voice was strained. A change is happening. I can feel it. I can feel the curse. I can almost... Then the pain hit. It crashed through her like a wave of broken glass, sharp and devastating. The curse fought back, pouring its ancient hatred into her touch, trying to destroy her before she could destroy it. Riven screamed. Senya yanked her hands away and watched in horror as he collapsed to his knees, clutching his chest. Frost was spreading across his shirt, visible even through the fabric, crawling up toward his throat. What happened? She dropped beside him, afraid to touch him again. The curse. He could barely speak through chattering teeth. It is fighting back. You almost broke through, and it is punishing me for letting you try. You are dying. The words came out as a sob. Perhaps. His eyes were starting to glaze. Perhaps not. The curse has never been challenged like this before. It is angry. But anger means fear. It knows you are a threat. I cannot watch you die because of me. Then do not watch. Go find Mara. Maybe she knows a way to help. Senya scrambled to her feet and ran. Behind her, she heard Riven's body hit the floor. Mara was already running toward her when Senya burst into the corridor. I felt it, Mara gasped. The curse. A rupture occurred. He is dying. Senya grabbed the healer's arm. The curse fought back. There is frost spreading across his chest. They found Riven unconscious on the floor, his skin ashen and his lips blue. The frost had spread further, crawling up his neck and down his arms like a web of frozen veins. Mara knelt beside him and pressed her fingers to his throat. Her expression grew grim. His heart is slowing. The curse is trying to freeze it completely. Can you stop it? I can slow it. Buy time. Mara began working, her hands glowing with soft golden light. But I cannot break the curse. Only you can do that. I tried. It nearly killed him. Because you did not have everything you needed. You have the power, child. But power alone is not enough. Do you remember what I told you? Love given freely as sacrifice. A precious offering. A price that might destroy you. I remember, Senya said quietly. Then you understand what must happen. You must offer a part of yourself to the curse. A gift it can take in exchange for releasing him. What kind of gift? The curse feeds on loss, on grief, on broken things. To break it, you must give it a treasure to break. A treasure you value more than your own survival. Senya stared at Riven's frozen face, at the man who had saved her, believed in her, shown her warmth even when he had none to spare. Tell me what to do, she said. Place your hands on his heart. Open yourself to the curse completely. Let it see everything you are, everything you feel, everything you would sacrifice. And when it asks for payment, she paused. Give it what it wants. Senya knelt beside Riven. She pulled off his gloves gently, revealing hands that were almost blue with cold, and placed them against her cheeks. Then she pressed her own palms flat against his chest, directly over his frozen heart. The curse hit her like a wall of ice. She was inside it now, surrounded by frozen darkness, feeling its ancient hatred wrap around her like chains. It showed her visions, the witch who had created it, weeping over her daughter's grave. The first king it had claimed, dying in agony because he dared to love his wife. Generation after generation of cold kings, frozen hearts, stolen warmth. And it showed her Riven, 7 years old, reaching for his mother's hand, and screaming when the touch burned like fire. Learning to build walls, learning to push everyone away, spending 24 years in perfect isolation. The curse was proud of its work, proud of the pain it had caused. "What do you want?" Senya asked it. "What will it take to let him go?" The curse answered not in words, but in images. It showed her what it wanted, her gift, her power, the ability to break curses that lived in her blood. If she gave that up, she would be ordinary again. No special power, no ability to help others the way she had helped Riven. But there was more. The curse showed her the second price. Her memories of these months with Riven. Every conversation, every touch, every moment of growing love. It wanted to take them, to consume them, to leave her hollow and unknowing. She would save him, but she would not remember why. "No," the word tore out of her. "That is too much." The curse pressed harder, showing her the alternative. Riven dead, his body frozen solid, his kingdom falling into chaos. Senya wept inside the frozen darkness. "If I give you my memories of him," she murmured, "will he live? Will he be truly free?" The curse pulsed with hungry satisfaction. "Yes." "And he would remember me? Even if I do not remember him?" "Yes." "He would remember everything." "Take it," she said. "Take my power and my memories. Just let him live." The curse descended on her like an avalanche. She screamed as it tore through her, ripping away pieces of herself she had not known existed. Her gift shredded first, dissolving into the frozen darkness like smoke. Then her memories began to unravel. Riven's face blurred, his voice faded, the weight of his gaze, the warmth of his rare laughter. All of it dissolving, scattering, gone. She was falling through ice and darkness, losing herself piece by piece. And then, just before the last memory vanished, she heard a voice. No. Not the curse. Someone else. Light exploded through the darkness. Warm light, golden and fierce, burning through the ice like sunlight through shadow. Senya felt hands grab her, pull her, wrench her away from the curse's hungry jaws. She slammed back into her body with a gasp. Riven was sitting up. His eyes were open, blazing with fury and power, and his hands were locked around her wrists. The frost on his skin was melting, running off him in rivulets of water. "You are not taking her." His voice was a snarl, directed at a presence Senya could not see. "You are not taking anything from her." The curse screamed inside Senya's mind, thrashing against Riven's grip. But a shift had occurred, a change in the balance of power. "How?" Senya gasped. "You were dying." "I was dying," he agreed. His eyes found hers, and behind the fury she saw vastness and desperation. "And then I felt you offering yourself to save me, felt you giving up everything that makes you who you are." His grip on her wrists tightened. "And I realized that I would rather die 1,000 times than let that happen." "But the curse?" "The curse required sacrifice." His voice cracked. "Love given freely at great personal cost. It did not have to be your sacrifice, Senya. It could have been mine." Understanding crashed over her. "You offered yourself," she breathed. "You offered your own pain to break the curse. 24 years of it." He laughed weakly. "Every moment of isolation, every touch that burned, every person I pushed away. I gave it all to the curse. Let it feast on my suffering instead of yours." And it accepted? It had no choice. His smile was exhausted but real. The witch who created it. She was punishing my ancestor for betraying her love. She wanted the men of my line to understand what she lost. But I understood. For the first time, a king of Valdrin truly understood what it meant to love someone so much that losing them would be unbearable. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. I understood because of you. Senya was crying. You could have died. I almost did. But then a miracle happened. When I offered myself, you were still connected to me through your gift, still pouring your power into the curse even as it tried to devour you. And somehow, together, we were enough. My suffering and your power, combined. It broke. It broke, Senya repeated dumbly. The curse is gone. Riven lifted their joined hands, and Senya realized with a shock that she could feel his skin. Warm skin. Living warmth instead of deathly cold. For the first time in my life, I am not frozen. Mayra made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. Impossible, the old healer said quietly. The curse was unbreakable. Everyone said so. Everyone was wrong. Riven rose to his feet, pulling Senya up with him. He was unsteady, trembling with exhaustion, but he was alive. He was warm. He was free. Everyone underestimated what two people could do when they stopped trying to sacrifice themselves alone and started fighting together. Senya stared at him, still processing what had happened. Her gift. She reached for it instinctively and found it still there, battered but intact. The curse had begun consuming it but had not finished before Riven intervened. And her memories. She searched for them frantically. Firelight conversations, rare smiles, the first time he said her name. All still there, all still hers. I thought I lost you, she breathed. I thought the curse took everything. It tried. Riven cupped her face in his bare hands, his warm hands, and looked at her with eyes no longer frozen. But some things are stronger than curses. Some things cannot be taken no matter how much darkness tries to consume them. What things? He smiled. A full smile, unguarded and free, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. Love, he said simply, given freely, fought for, chosen again and again even when it hurts. Then he kissed her. His lips were warm. His hands were warm. His whole body pressed against hers was warm, and Senya melted into him with a sob of relief and joy. The next morning, Senya woke to warmth. Riven's arms were still around her, his heartbeat strong against her back. She lay still for a long moment, savoring the simple miracle of it. Then reality intruded. Shouting echoed from deep in the castle. Running footsteps, the clash of steel. Riven was awake instantly, rolling out of bed with predatory grace. His eyes were sharp as he reached for the sword mounted above the fireplace. A guard stumbled through the door, blood streaming from a wound on his temple. Your Majesty, the castle is under attack. Alpha Sefton. He has brought warriors from 3 packs. They breached the eastern wall. Senya's blood turned to ice that had nothing to do with any curse. How many? Riven demanded. At least 200. Maybe more. They are saying the curse is broken, that you are vulnerable now. Sefton is proclaiming himself the new Alpha King. Riven's expression went cold in a way Senya recognized. Not the frozen emptiness of the curse, but the calculated fury of a warrior preparing for battle. Senya grabbed his arm. You cannot face 200 warriors. I can face anything, but I need you safe. The passages beneath the castle lead to the forest. No. The word came out harder than she intended. I am not running. Not from Sefton. Not ever again. Senya, if he captures you, then I will die fighting. She met his gaze without flinching. I spent 19 days running from that man. I am not going to hide in a tunnel while you face him alone. Riven stared at her for a long moment. Then a smile tugged at his lips. "You are going to be a terrifying queen," he said. "I have not agreed to be queen yet." "You will." He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. "But first, we survive this." They made their way through the castle together, following the sounds of battle. The throne room was a fortress. Perhaps 40 of Riven's warriors had gathered there, forming ranks before the ancient throne. Before anyone could settle into position, the throne room doors exploded inward. Sefton stood in the wreckage, flanked by his enforcers. He was exactly as Senya remembered. Golden-haired and handsome, with a smile that promised cruelty masked as charm. "There you are." His voice echoed through the chamber. "My runaway bond-breaker. I have been looking forward to finishing what we started." Riven stepped forward, placing himself between Senya and Sefton. "You are in my throne room, uninvited, with armed warriors. That is an act of war." "War?" Sefton laughed. "This is justice. You harbored a convicted criminal. You violated the Treaty of Pact Justice." "The treaty allows for royal asylum in cases of wrongful conviction." "Wrongful conviction?" Sefton's eyes flickered with darkness. "The woman is a bond breaker. She destroyed her mate to avoid her obligations." "She was never mated." Riven's voice cut like a blade. "She never broke any bond. You accused her falsely because she refused to be claimed by you, and then you branded her before anyone could investigate the truth." Murmurs rippled through the assembled warriors on both sides. "Lies," Sefton snarled. "The truth." Riven's voice rose, carrying to every corner of the chamber. "And I will tell you another truth. You knew what she was. You knew her bloodline carried valuable power. You tried to claim her to use that power for yourself, and when she refused, you destroyed her so no one else could have what you could not possess. You have no proof. I have records. My archivists found correspondence between you and a black market trader in magical bloodlines. Letters discussing the value of a cursebreaker's gift. Plans to breed the power into your own line through forced mating." Sefton's face went white. "Those documents were stolen. They mean nothing." "They mean everything. They mean you committed fraud against pack law. They mean you branded an innocent woman. They mean you came here today not for justice, but to silence the truth before it could spread." "You are a fool." Sefton's composure cracked completely. "Even if everything you say is true, it does not matter. I have 200 warriors. You have 40. When this is over, there will be no one left to tell your version of events." "You are wrong." The new voice came from the doors. Senya turned to see Neve standing in the entrance, her silver blonde hair streaming behind her, flanked by warriors wearing unfamiliar colors. "What is this?" Sefton demanded. "Reinforcements." Neve walked into the throne room, her bearing regal. Turns out several alpha packs were very interested to learn that Sefton of Thornmire has been trafficking in magical bloodlines, particularly the packs whose daughters he has been courting. She smiled coldly. Amazing how quickly political alliances shift when people learn their potential son-in-law has been secretly planning to breed power through forced mating. Behind her, more warriors poured into the chamber. 50, 100. More than enough to turn the tide. Sefton's forces began to waver. "This changes nothing." Sefton drew his sword. "I will kill you myself if I have to, Riven." He never finished the sentence. Riven moved faster than Senya's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing still. The next, his blade was pressed against Sefton's throat. "You are wrong about one more thing," Riven said quietly. "She is not a cursebreaker. She is my mate. My chosen queen. And if you ever speak of her again, I will remove your tongue before I take your head." Sefton's sword clattered to the ground. His warriors threw down their weapons. The battle was over before it truly began. In the aftermath, as Sefton was dragged away in chains, Neve approached Senya. "I warned you about him once," she said. "About his secrets." I remember. I was trying to protect him. He is my family, difficult as he is. Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. Now I think caring for you might be the thing that saved him. I think you might be good for this kingdom, Senya of Thornmire. Then she walked away. 6 months later, Senya stood in the Cathedral of Valdrin, dressed in white, preparing to become queen. Sefton himself was gone, executed for his crimes after a trial that laid bare every dark secret he had hidden. Senya had not watched the execution. She had no desire to see more death. Instead, she had focused on building a refuge for women falsely accused of pack crimes, a training program for healers with gifts like hers, and now, finally, the wedding. Riven waited at the altar, wearing formal black, his dark hair swept back from a face that had learned to smile in the past 6 months. He watched her approach with an expression of such open adoration that Senya felt tears prick her eyes. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, warm hands, hands that could touch her without pain. "I love you," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "I should have said it sooner. I should have said it from the moment you touched me, and I felt warmth for the first time in my life." "You are saying it now," she replied. "That is enough." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Words spoken, vows exchanged, rings placed on fingers. And then the moment came. "You may kiss your bride," the priest announced. Riven cupped her face in his hands and kissed her in front of every noble in the realm. Not a gentle kiss, not a formal kiss, but a kiss that spoke of everything they had survived, everything they had fought for, everything they would build together. The crowd erupted in cheers. Later, at the feast, Neve raised a glass. "To the King and Queen of Valdrin, may their reign be long and warm." Laughter rippled through the hall. The cold king was cold no more. Senya leaned against Riven's shoulder, watching their subjects celebrate. "Happy?" he asked quietly. "More than I ever thought possible." She turned to look at him. "A year ago I was crawling through mud, certain I would die at your gates. And instead, you shattered every expectation I ever had." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "You shattered the curse that bound my bloodline for generations. You shattered the conspiracy that would have destroyed us both. You shattered every wall I built around my heart." "That is a lot of shattering. The best kind." His arm tightened around her. "When you arrived at my gates, the guards expected me to execute you. They thought a bond breaker deserved nothing but death. And what did you think? I thought you were the most important thing I had ever seen." His voice dropped. "I did not understand why. I could not explain the pull I felt toward you. But looking back now, I think some part of me knew from the very first moment." "Knew what?" "That you would change everything?" He smiled, and it was the brightest expression she had ever seen on his face. "That you would save me? That you would make me believe in warmth again." Senya thought about the girl who had crawled to his gates, broken and desperate and certain she had nothing left to offer. That girl could never have imagined this moment. "I came here begging for mercy," she said softly. "I never expected to find a home." "You did more than find a home." Riven turned her to face him fully. "You built one. With me. For both of us." Outside the castle, the news was spreading. The cold king had married his bond-breaker queen. The ancient curse was broken. The pacts were changing. Inside the great hall, surrounded by celebration and warmth, Senya kissed her husband and felt, for the first time in her life, completely whole. She had crawled to the Alpha King's gates begging for mercy. What he did next had shattered every pack in the realm. And in the ashes of everything they had destroyed together, they had built a new foundation. Warm, lasting, enduring long after both of them were gone. Love, given freely, chosen again and again. forever.